we are talking about the Arab Spring and whether the Arab Spring is now the Arab winter. We have a group of distinguished guests and experts. We have from Tunisia Mr. Professor Kamal Ben Younes, who is an academic and journalist. We have from Egypt journalist Sameh Elhady, who is also a community and human rights activist. And we have Mr. Abdulhakem Alsadah, who is president and founder of the National Association of Yemeni Americans, NAYA, in the US. Let me ask the question to all of our three guests, and we will start with Professor Ben Younes. And the question is the so called Arab Spring turning to be the Arab winter, and why?
I'm optimist and pessimistic in the same time. I think if we have to take on consideration the process of evolution in historical phenomenon of Arab revolution, of Arab demands of democracy, development, of youth in the Arab world, unrest and revolution, asking development, social equality, and democratization for medium term and long term. I think the process started and will continue and will succeed. But for short term, we have a lot of failure for several reasons because the revolution was suddenly and we don't have leader, no vision, no strategy, and we have new corrupted leaders. We have failure, but for medium term and long term, I think that the process will succeed, that millions who have been in the street from Yemen, Egypt, Cairo, Morocco, Syria, and all the Arab world and the region will succeed as a phenomenon of movement, as process, but maybe all the people or the leader have to announce their self-criticism and to rebuild a new process for medium term and long term, especially now after the election of Biden, maybe even international level and American level, we will have a new support to development and democratization, not only to security priority.
Mr. Ben Younes, will come back to you later to assess the situation in Tunisia. But let me ask the same question to our two guests, and let me go now to Mr. Sada.
Yes, good morning and have a great day. And I would like to first wish you, Doctor, and all your listeners in the States and around the world, I guess, for a happy new year and hopefully a peaceful year, a year that will see transitions to a peaceful world. In reference to your question, it is definitely, and it's a view, an American view, a person who is of an Arab descent, looking into so-called Arab Spring from the outside in, not from the inside out. It's definitely not a spring by any means. It's a disaster. Started well. Most people were trapped with absolutely no futures and absolute dictatorship regimes. Common people were inspired. They went out, they demonstrated, they did everything they thought they were doing right. But it ended where we are today. Most of the countries, when we try to compare, we have to look at the reality in what is actually going on, how it was 10 years ago and how it is today, before and after. Today, by every measure, if you go back and you ask the people, they would tell you we want, not everyone, but most people would tell you we wish for to go back to where we were. This is how you measure the differences. This is number one. Number two, the failure have caused people to regret and to go back into their incubators. The inspiration the outlook into a better future is dead now. And that, in my view, is because of several reasons. One, like your previous guest said, there was no clear objective. There was no clear goals. And all the goals and objectives, they were stated forward by the various people, were higher than the people could afford, were more optimistic than the countries themselves can afford. You cannot jump from A to B without having a ladder that starts from the bottom up. Any revolutions through history, yes, it's a revolution by definition. That means a change, a complete change. What happened in the Middle East was neither a complete change nor a change by any imagination. So that was created, led to where we are today.
Thank you, Mr. Alsadah. Let me turn back to Mr. Ben Younes, Professor Ben Younes, to assess the situation in Tunisia right now. Some people say the reasons for the relative success in Tunisia, I don't know if you agree with that assessment, are the reverse reasons for failure in other countries. In other words, in Tunisia, for example, the army did not interfere. And also the Islamic opposition was more flexible. Do you agree, and why?
Yes, I agree with that. The army in Tunisia during the last 70 years were mainly out of power as an observer, and as didn't play the same role like in other military regime in the region. Tunisia regime used to be always made security regime, working mainly with Ministry of Interior. And the army played excellent role before and after the collapse after Zain Abdin Ben Ali. Plus, thanks to Habib Bourguiba policy and his staff, Tunisian elite who took power after the collapse of French occupation regime in Tunisia, the secular and Islamist had a chance always to work together, even if we had some clashes between Bourguiba and the Muslim Brotherhood or Ghannouchi and other, but always we have this debate and dialogue between secular and Islamists. And after the revolution, the Islamists and secular played this role. And maybe the Tunisian example, in my point of view, the originality is that the main leader in both sides, seculars, leftists, Islamists, tried to build an example of compromise, of consensus between majority and minority, Islamist and secular, and we had more flexibility by comparison to Islamist or Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt after the collapse of Mubarak regime, or in Yemen, or in Syria, or in Libya. The people accepted to work together, and under the pressure of the street after the failure of the government from 2011 to 2013 and 2014, the civil society, the secular party, who asked the collapse of Nahda and the Troika regime government, accepted to have national dialogue led by secular and civil society, and the change happened without military coup or security coup like what happened in Libya or Egypt or in Syria or Yemen.
Okay, talking about Yemen, we will turn in a second to Mr. Alsadah to assess the situation in Yemen, but after the break.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights. At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Enjoy the first Syrian-style cuisine in Michigan. At Damas Cuisine and Catering, you'll find a wide selection of Syrian foods and sweets in our menu, like frike, hoizi, grape leaves with steak, mishawi platter, hot mahashi, char-grilled kebab, shawarma, and much more. Get super fast delivery from Damas Cuisine and Catering right to your door. Order online at damascuisine.com/menu and track your order live. Damas Cuisine and Catering, 28841 Orchard Lake Road in Farmington Hills. Call 248-987-4985.
Welcome back to our discussion on Radio Baladi. We are discussing whether the so-called Arab Spring is turning into the Arab winter. And I would like to ask my guest, Mr. Alsadah, and now who is head of a Yemeni American association in the U.S. I was talking a few minutes ago with Lebanese politician Walid Jumblat, who said that sectarianism and foreign intervention seem to play a major role in the upheavals, not just in Yemen, but also in Libya, Syria, elsewhere. So when it comes to Yemen, do you agree with that assessment? How do you assess the situation in Yemen?
Well, first, it sounds hypocritical from Walid Jumblat to talk about sectarian when he sits in a country with the most sectarian system in the world. And even though I agree with him, that is a true statement, but it's not all the picture. As a professor of government and political science and a researcher in social science, I look at things from the institution's perspective. I look at it from an American perspective, not from a Yemeni perspective. The whole entire system collapsed. There is no institution. There is no sitting institution. There is a government who is trying to rule from outside. There is an anarch and a militia controlling by force the capital of Yemen. And there is other militias controlling the southern governors of Yemen. The government is just trying to get back in, but the system is really collapsed. There is absolutely no functioning system in Yemen. As a result, sectarian, militias, mentalities are expanding in the whole entire Yemen. Regional interference has been a failure. It's been a disaster because the countries that claim to support the legitimate government came to Yemen with absolutely no strategic plan, not how to get into the war or to get out of it. The assumptions were that they were gonna take over Yemen and put the government back in place within a few weeks, a month at the most. And here we are 7 years later, and the situation is a zillion times worse than it was. This is how is the situation. The whole entire system collapsed. The political party system collapsed. The tribal system itself collapsed because the assumption of tribal loyalty and tribal love for the country failed because the truth is most of these people, especially the big sheikhs, were there for hire. You hire them, they work for you. And this is the social system that collapsed. The political system, the political parties were first they were part of the government system before the winter revolution, so-called winter revolutions. It's not a spring by any means. They were part of the failures. They were part of the corruption. All the political parties, the right, the middle, the left, they were part of the system at all times. They failed.
Okay,
They can't
Mr.
deliver.
Sada. Now, we are joined now by Mr. Sameh Elhady, who is an Egyptian American journalist, and I would like to ask him the same question, first question that you both, everybody had answered, and that is the so-called Arab Spring turning to be the Arab winter, and why, Mr. Al-Hadi?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Atef, and good morning to you and listeners, and also to the distinguished guests. What's happening in the Arab Spring that a few things. Number one, the Arab Spring did not get the appropriate chance and environment to present the qualifications and the goodwill of the people who started the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring, unfortunately, been scrambled and been crushed by the anti-revolution system and ideas and parties who came together with a plan to make sure that the Arab Spring did not see a full extent and maximize the impact of the positive impact of it. Now I can say with the confidence that the Arab Spring in a winter sleep, the sense of change is still there. It's now moving very slowly because of the heavy weight of the anti-revolution and anti-change power demonstrated by the military actions in some places like Libya, Egypt, and maybe Iraq and Syria now. But if we took a look into the history, we will see that the changes take time to put in place. The Arab Spring will come back again when the international community understands that their interest is not going to be with the regimes who's ruling now, that their best interest is to support the people and the will of the people of the Arab world entirely, from the west side, Morocco, to the east side, at the east with Iraq. In the middle, the core of the Arab Spring, yes, it started in Tunisia, which I give them a lot of credit. They've been able to maintain a big portion of their revolution in power, and they've been able to protect it to an extent. But in Egypt and other places, we see a backlashes. We see a return to the old regime methods or the regime ideas. But I can tell you and assure you, based on many evidence, that the Arab Spring is still there, but now they are in a sleeping mode.
Let me turn to Professor Ben Younes. Professor Ben Younes, How do you assess the relative success? I hope you will agree on that term, relative success. The relative success now in Sudan and Algeria. How do you assess that?
I think we have to talk for Sudan, Algeria, or for the rest of the region for process. To have a short comment to one of our previous colleagues who said that the population are asking or have a hope to go back to the previous regime or to the old regime. I have to say that we had collapse of the old regimes. The process started 3 decades before, when the world and the region started talking about regime change from within or from outside, or from within and from outside with international support at the same time, like what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan and other, when we have been talking about Middle East Partnership Initiative and etc. What happened in Algeria and Sudan and other places started a few decades ago. We have, before the Arab Spring or the Arab Revolution in Tunisia, we had big marches in Sudan. I have been in Khartoum. I have been in Algeria before the collapse of Zine Abdin Ben Ali and after October 1989 and Algerian democratic election in 1990 and 1991. We had a process of change, but all this process supposed to fail and could fail for short term, but for long term, we need international support, regional support, economic support, like we had in East of Europe, for example, Marshall Plan, and we need a new elite, but because the elite who took power after the collapse of the previous corrupted and dictator regimes are not ready for change, for leading the countries. And I think that what happened last year, for example, for Algeria, it was extraordinary movement. During 1 year, millions have been every Friday in the street, zero events, zero clashes. What happened in Sudan? But after that, the military took power again. Maybe they need transition, but we have to support Algeria democratic transition, or Sudan transition, or transition in other countries, including in Yemen, without accepting foreigner interference in military level. We don't need more proxy wars. We need international support to development and democratization, and to political reform, to educational reform, and to a new process, a new partnership for security level in hard security and soft security. That means democratization process is a part of security solution, and for illegal immigration and other security concerns for North countries like Europe and US.
Mr. Sameh Elhady, in Egypt, with the incoming Biden administration, how do you expect Mr. Biden, who have been saying he has been saying that his focus will now be on human rights? How much impact will his focus on human rights have on the human rights records, the record of freedoms in Egypt?
Well, we have to understand something, that the relationship between Egypt as an ally to the United States uh, is like a little bit different than other countries in the region. For a long time, the United States have been offering U.S. aid, which is equal to $1.3 billion to the Egyptian government in a form of economic support and military equipment and training support. Because of that aid, the $1.3 billion, the American administration, regardless if either it's Democratic or Republican, will always have a say in the record of the human rights and the civil movement in the Egyptian atmosphere. And this is the only mechanism that any administration can utilize to ask the Egyptian government, what is your plan? What are you doing with the civil rights? What are you doing with the human rights? And it's up to the Egyptian government to continue working with the U.S. administration on this base as an ally and improve the atmosphere, which is definitely, by all means, by all says, needs an improvement, needs more liberty, and needs more welcome environment to give a chance to those people to work and act on the ground. Without understanding why the American administration is interfering in this, there has always been a hostility in working with the American administration. But again, the American administration have a say in this atmosphere at Egypt because we support the Egyptian economy with $1.3 billion. And the Congress committees, by all means, will ask the American administration what kind of support you give to Egypt and how this support will serve the American interest. The administration, the upcoming administration, the Biden administration, have been clear and open about this, not only for Egypt, for all other parties and all other countries who are working with the United States of America as an ally or receiving a sort of support, either military support, training, education, economy, anything, will be subject to a question. What are you doing with our money? What are you doing with the taxpayer money? Because the Congress will ask us how we spend this and in what extent this will serve the American interest. Now I can say again, just in conclusion, that the upcoming American administration will ask Egypt as an ally not to interfere into their sovereignty or to their national security, just as an ally, that we would like to see them in a best form of performance in human rights. What are you doing with our aid and how we can work together to maximize the impact of this aid to the better serve of the interests of the Egyptian and the American people.
Mr. Al-Sada, back to the situation in Yemen. Some people suggest that the best solution for the crisis in Yemen is just is division. Have a North Yemen and South Yemen, like it was at one point in history. Do you agree with that, and why?
War in Yemen is not between the South and the North. It is about the war is about militias taking over the government. And there is the militias, as many militias in the South, the same as the militias in the North. Unification, before unification, you need to go back to ask, how was the situation before unification, before 1990? There was a war every 2 years between South and North. The Yemen never seen stability until the unification, the 3 years after the unification. Unification is not the problem. It is the corrupt politicians that rule the country. Unification has nothing to do with the corruption, has nothing to do with the failures the country is seeing. These are the politicians throwing their failures at unification. What does unification have to do with the corruption, the level of corruption the country is seeing? What does the unification have to do with the current war? It has nothing to do with geography, have nothing to do with this. These are real conflicts over power. But before I go into the Yemeni situation and interference, I like two of your honorable guests keep mentioning we need international support for the so-called Arab winter or Arab spring to work. We need international support. Who said there is any revolution that will succeed based in international support? Number two, who said that the international community is a humanitarian organization? They have nothing else to do but to give other countries money to develop themselves and to develop their country. This is hypocrisy. This is the problem the Arab world is facing. This hypocrisy that comes from elite, from educated people. well, we need to do our revolution, but yes, we need the world to help us. The Western countries don't care whether the Arab world have democracy or not. They haven't cared for years. They are the ones who have supported the systems for the last 70 years. Why are they going to change now? If the country, if the people are not ready for a real change, that starts from with them. That depends in the country's own resources, human resources, economic resources, social resources. You're not gonna build country. You can't build the country depending in other countries to come and help you. In one hand, we say, well, we don't want the Western countries to help us. We don't want them to interfere. But yet we wanted them to help us. How do you balance in these two? And that's why I said that it's an Arab winter, because these movements that went out, they were hoping for a homegrown change. When the countries interfered is when everything changed upside down, and it went from a revolution to change into a revolution to kill each other. And then this relativity, some of us have this relativity. Well, you know what, I'm very optimistic. I'm not, I'm a little bit pessimistic, but I'm optimistic. This is irrelevant, whether you're optimistic or not. What is your goals and objectives?
I'm glad to hear you say you are optimistic, because that's my last question for our two remaining guests. And I want to thank you. I want to also apologize for the quality of your audio. Sorry about that. But in 30 seconds, Mr. Professor Ben Younes, how optimistic are you about the future of democracy and civil rule in the Middle East in general?
I'm optimistic. I think that during last 10 years, we had the collapse of the previous dictator and corrupted regimes. In 2013, we have a change in some countries by military side, in other by civil society side, like what happened in Tunisia. Now, maybe we need the third way for democratization, more pragmatic, more open, including for Egypt and other places. And we hope that the international community and the new American administration will support peaceful process in Libya, in Algeria and Sudan and Morocco and etc. to give the rest of Arab world the model, the example, the moderate example for working together between Islamist and secular, and to make a difference. Don't confuse proxy war in certain countries like Syria and Yemen and Libya and revolution and democratization and democratic transition.
Mr. Sameh Elhady, in a few words, are you optimistic?
I am. I am optimistic with caution, and I cannot rely on the short term on the current government who is governing in most of the Arab countries to open the door for changes, but with the assistance of the international community based on a mutual respect and a mutual interest, there is a chance on the long term for a change that may be coming.
Thank you all very much